The first contact between the Devourers and Council forces happened exactly as humanity had predicted. The Trilix system, a major industrial hub home to 8 billion tree-like beings, received no warning before the attackers arrived. The frontier, defense grid that might have detected the approaching threat, had been dark for over a year. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's new flagship hidden beyond the system's edge. The ship was invisible to all sensors, its hull absorbing electromagnetic radiation like a hole in space itself. Around him, 200 similar vessels waited in perfect silence. "Report," Morrison ordered quietly. 12 Devourer ships have entered the system, said Lieutenant Amy Parker from her tactical station. The Trilix Defense Force is moving to intercept. 36 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts. On the main display, the battle played out with terrible inevitability. The alien defenders used tactics that had worked against pirates and raiders for generations. They formed defensive formations, concentrated their firepower, and tried to protect their most valuable worlds. Against the Devourers, these strategies were worse than useless. The lead Devourer vessel is beginning conversion operations on the outer asteroid belt, reported Captain Rick Davis from the intelligence station. They're turning raw matter into additional ships. Morrison watched as the enemy demonstrated their true horror. The Devourers didn't fight like any normal species. They simply absorbed whatever attacked them, growing stronger with each exchange. When Trilix plasma bolts struck their hulls, the energy was redirected into manufacturing systems. When missiles exploded against their shields, the blast force was harvested to power their weapons. "Trilix flagship is down," Parker announced. "The remaining defense force is retreating to the inner system." "How long until planetary conversion begins?" Morrison asked. "Estimated 6 hours until the first population centers are targeted," Davis replied. Morrison nodded grimly. This was the moment they had prepared for. "Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 1. Across the hidden human armada, ships began to move with deadly precision. Captain Susan Wells commanded the medical ships that would evacuate Trilix civilians if possible. Engineer Tony Blake led the assault carriers whose job was to capture Devourer technology intact. Admiral Ben Hughes coordinated the main battle fleet, each ship armed with weapons designed specifically for this enemy. "First wave launching," reported Parker. "Stealth fighters are moving to attack positions." The human assault began with silence and invisible death. Fighter craft smaller than asteroids slipped through the Devourer formation, their quantum resonators charging to full power. When they struck, the effect was devastating. The enemy ships simply came apart at the molecular level, their exotic matter hulls unable to withstand weapons that attacked the fundamental forces holding atoms together. 4 Devourer vessels destroyed, Davis announced. No indication they detected our fighters. But the enemy adapted quickly, as they always did. The remaining ships began scanning for the source of the attacks, their sensors probing frequencies that had never been used before. They were learning, evolving, becoming more dangerous with each passing moment. "They've detected our stealth fields," Parker warned. "All Devourer ships are converging on our position." "Then it's time to show them what we really are," Morrison said. "All ships, drop stealth. Full attack formation." 200 human warships materialized in space like avenging angels. Each vessel was larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their hulls gleamed with armor that could withstand stellar fire, their weapons charged with energies that bent space itself. The Devourers paused, their machine, intelligences trying to process this new development. They had consumed entire galaxies, but they had never encountered ships like these. The humans had built their fleet using technologies gathered from a dozen different species, then improved them beyond recognition. "Begin primary bombardment," Morrison ordered. The space around the Trilix system erupted in fire as humanity's fury was unleashed. Plasma cannons that drew power directly from the quantum vacuum tore through Devourer shields. Gravitational pulse. Weapons created miniature black holes that crushed enemy vessels. Most devastating of all were the virus torpedoes, weapons that carried computer programs designed to turn the Devourer's own systems against them. "Direct hit on the lead conversion ship," Parker reported. Their manufacturing systems are going critical. Morrison watched as the Devourer vessel began to tear itself apart. The virus had infected its command protocols, turning its matter conversion systems into weapons of self-destruction. It was a poetic justice that pleased him deeply, but the enemy was not defenseless. The surviving Devourers launched their own attack, weapons that could disintegrate planets striking at the human fleet. Several ships took damage, their crews fighting to maintain systems while space itself tried to tear them apart. UES Retribution is reporting hull breaches, Parker announced. UES Vengeance has lost main power. Order damaged ships to fall back, Morrison commanded. Second wave moved to attack positions. Captain Amy Clark led the second wave from the bridge of the UES Justice. Her ship was equipped with the most experimental weapons in the human arsenal, devices that existed only in theory until the Devourer threat made them necessary. As her formation closed with the enemy, she gave the order that would change the course of the battle. Fire the dimensional torpedoes. Space folded in on itself as weapons that attacked reality itself struck the Devourer formation. 3 enemy ships simply vanished, erased from existence by weapons that removed them from the timeline itself. The remaining Devourers found themselves facing an enemy that could rewrite the laws of physics. "Admiral," Davis reported from the intelligence station, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the galactic core. The main Devourer fleet is accelerating this way." Morrison studied the tactical display. The battle in the Trilix system was just the beginning. The real test would come when humanity faced the full strength of an enemy that had destroyed civilizations across multiple galaxies. "How many ships are we looking at?" "Preliminary scans suggest over 1,000 vessels," Davis replied. "All larger than anything we've encountered so far." "Time until arrival?" 72 hours. Morrison activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We've bloodied the enemy, but the real fight is coming. The next 3 days will determine whether intelligent life survives in this galaxy. I won't lie to you about the odds. We're outnumbered 5-1 by an enemy that has never been defeated, but we have something they don't. We know who we are and what we're fighting for." Across the fleet, human crews prepared for the battle of their lives. In the medical bays, Dr. Wells supervised teams that would treat wounds no doctor had ever seen. In the engineering sections, Blake's teams worked frantically to repair battle damage and improve weapon systems. On the bridge of every ship, captains checked and rechecked their battle plans. The final confrontation began at the edge of the Vortex Nebula, where space itself was twisted by gravitational anomalies. Morrison had chosen the battlefield carefully, using the distorted space-time to hide the true size of his fleet until the last possible moment. "Devourer main fleet entering sensor range," Parker announced. "Confirmed count, 1,047 ships." Morrison looked out at the approaching Armada. Each enemy vessel was kilometers long, their hulls dark with the absorbed matter of consumed worlds. They moved through space like sharks through water, graceful and deadly. "Signal the hidden squadrons," Morrison ordered. "Execute Plan Omega." Across the nebula, concealed human forces revealed themselves. Ships that had been hiding in gravitational shadows, weapons platforms disguised as asteroids, and most devastatingly, the converted merchant vessels that Blake had filled with antimatter, warheads. The Battle of the Vortex Nebula lasted 6 days and reshaped the local stellar neighborhood. Human forces used every trick they had learned in centuries of warfare, combined with technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They fought not just for survival, but for the right to exist in a universe that seemed determined to destroy them. When it was over, space was filled with the wreckage of both fleets. Humanity had won, but at a terrible cost. Half their ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Thousands of their best and brightest would never see home again. But the Devourers were broken. Their command structure was shattered, their fleet scattered, their ability to coordinate large-scale operations destroyed. The survivors fled back into intergalactic space, carrying with them the knowledge that they had finally met their match. Morrison stood on the bridge of the heavily damaged defiance looking out at a galaxy that was safe for the first time in eons. Behind him, communications flooded in from across council space. Messages of gratitude, requests for aid, and most surprising of all, formal apologies for humanity's banishment. "Admiral," Parker said quietly, "Ambassador Zethkara is requesting permission to come aboard. She says the Council wants to discuss humanity's return to galactic civilization." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal ocean under the dome of stars. 47 different species sat in their assigned seats, each one representing billions of lives across the galaxy. The air hummed with tension as translators worked to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Today was the day they had all waited for. Today they would finally deal with the human problem. Captain Jake. Morrison stood in the center of the hall with his hands behind his back. His blue uniform was clean and pressed, but his face showed the weight of what was coming. Next to him stood Dr. Lisa Carter, a woman with kind eyes who had spent her life trying to help other species. On his other side was Admiral Ben Hughes, an old soldier whose gray hair told stories of 100 battles across the stars. 3 humans against an entire galaxy. The Vorthak ambassador rose from her crystal chair. Zethkara was tall and thin, made of living crystal that caught the light and threw it back in sharp colors. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "We are here today to judge the actions of humanity," she said. "For too long, this species has brought chaos to our peaceful galaxy." Morrison did not move. He had heard these words before in smaller meetings, in quiet conversations, in the whispers that followed humans wherever they went. The galaxy feared them, and fear always led to hate. "The humans have broken our most sacred laws," continued Zethkara. "They freed the Korath slaves without permission. They built weapons when we told them to make tools. They fought wars when we ordered peace. They terraform worlds that belong to other species. They act like they own the galaxy." A murmur ran through the hall. The ethereal collective's speaker, a being of pure light called Luxor Prime, floated forward. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in everyone's mind. "Humanity cannot be trusted to follow the rules. They are too violent, too unpredictable. They solve every problem with force. This cannot continue." More voices joined in. The Trilix delegation spoke of human ships that refused to follow shipping lanes. The Zephyrian Empire complained about humans who would not accept their authority. The Hegemony of Worlds listed a dozen cases where humans had interfered in local politics. Each species had a story about how humans had caused them trouble. Dr. Carter stepped forward. "May I speak?" she asked quietly. "The accused may defend themselves," said Zethkara, though her tone suggested it would make no difference. "You call us violent," Carter said. "But who stopped the blight plague that was killing the Kepler colonies? Human doctors worked for 3 years without sleep to find a cure. You say we break laws, but who built the trade routes that connect your worlds? Human engineers spent decades building the jump gates that let your ships travel between stars. You say we interfere, but who freed the Korath when your own laws said slavery was wrong?" Silence filled the hall for a moment. Then Luxor Prime responded. "These actions were done without permission. The Council makes decisions for the good of all species. Humans act alone, without thought for consequences. This is why you cannot be trusted." Admiral Hughes spoke for the first time. His voice was rough from years of commanding ships. "You want to talk about consequences? Fine. Let me tell you about consequences. When the Outer Rim colonies were attacked by pirates, who came to help? When the Andromedan refugees needed homes, who built cities for them? When the solar storms threatened the shipping lanes, who flew into radiation that would kill any other species to fix the warning beacons? These actions were unauthorized," said the Trilix ambassador, a creature that looked like a walking tree. "The Council did not approve them." "The Council never approves anything," Hughes shot back. "You talk and debate while people die. You write laws while planets burn. You make committees while species go extinct." The hall erupted in angry voices. Different species shouted in their own languages, creating a sound like 1,000 storms. Zethkara struck her crystal staff against the floor, making a sound that cut through the noise like a blade. "Enough," she said. "The humans prove our point with their words. They believe they know better than the collective wisdom of 47 species. They think their way is the only way. This arrogance is exactly why they must be stopped." Morrison finally spoke. His voice was calm and steady. "You want us gone?" "Yes," said Zethkara. "Humanity is banished from council space. You will leave all your colonies. You will give up all your trade routes. You will go beyond the outer rim and never return. If you refuse, your species will be destroyed." Carter activated a small device and a hologram appeared above the hall. It showed the galaxy as a web of light, with trade routes connecting every major world. "Look at this," she said. "See the red lines? Those are human trade routes. See the blue dots? Those are human colonies. Watch what happens when we leave." The red lines began to disappear. Trade routes that connected distant worlds vanished. The blue dots went dark one by one. As the human presence faded from the map, gaps appeared in the galaxy's network. Worlds that had been connected were suddenly alone. Species that had traded for generations found themselves cut off from vital resources. "Empty threats," said Luxor Prime. "Other species can take over these routes." "Can they?" asked Carter. "Who else knows how to maintain the jump gates? Who else has ships that can survive the radiation storms in the Vortex Nebula? Who else has the medical knowledge to treat cross-species diseases?" "We will manage," said Zethkara. But her voice sounded less certain. Morrison nodded slowly. "Fine. We'll leave. But remember this day, Council. Remember it well. You think you know what humans are. You think we're just soldiers and troublemakers. You're about to learn what we really are." Turned to his companions. "Admiral Hughes, signal the fleet. Dr. Carter, start the evacuation protocols. We're going home." "What home?" asked the Trillex ambassador. "You have no worlds beyond the rim." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We'll make one. We're good at that." As the three humans walked toward the exit, the hall fell silent. 47 species watched them go, believing they had won a great victory. They had removed the chaos bringers, the rule breakers, the violent, unpredictable humans from their ordered galaxy. None of them noticed the small device Carter had left behind. None of them saw it scanning their biosignatures, recording their languages, mapping their genetic codes. None of them realized that in trying to exile humanity, they had just declared war on the one species that had been protecting them from threats they could not even imagine. The Council had made their choice. Soon they would learn the price of that choice. Outside the hall, Morrison looked up at the stars. "Time to go home," he said quietly. "Where is home now?" asked Carter. "Wherever we make it," Morrison replied. "And God help anyone who tries to take it from us." In the darkness beyond the galactic rim, humanity had found a new home among stars that no alien had ever seen. The system they chose lay hidden behind radiation storms and gravitational anomalies that made it nearly impossible to detect from a distance. Here in the shadow of a dying red giant, they built New Earth. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, watching the construction of what would become humanity's greatest stronghold. Massive ships that had carried them from their old homes were being converted into permanent structures. The knowledge and equipment they had taken from the galaxy was being put to use in ways the Council could never have imagined. "Admiral," said Dr. Lisa Carter, joining him at the viewing port, "the Council is ready for the briefing." Morrison nodded. It's time they knew the truth. In the secure conference room deep within the station, humanity's leadership gathered for a meeting that would change everything. Admiral Ben Hughes represented the military forces. Engineer Tony Blake spoke for the industrial sectors. Dr. Susan Wells led the civilian population. Captain Rick Davis commanded intelligence operations. These were the people who would decide humanity's future. "Before we begin," Morrison said, "I want everyone to understand that what we discuss here cannot leave this room. The survival of our species may depend on keeping these secrets. He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy they had left behind. But this map was different from any the Council had ever seen. It showed energy patterns and trajectories that extended far beyond the galactic borders, reaching into the void between star systems. For 30 years, Morrison continued, our deep space sensors have been tracking something approaching from intergalactic space. We designated them as the Devourers based on their behavior patterns. They are not a natural phenomenon. Dr. Carter took control of the display, zooming in on the approaching objects. These are artificial constructs, she explained. Ships, or something like ships, using technology that defies our understanding of physics. They appear to be a machine intelligence, possibly artificial life forms designed for one purpose: consumption. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Hughes was the first to speak. How long have you known about this? The first signs appeared 35 years ago, Morrison replied. Faint energy signatures at the edge of our sensor range. We've been studying them ever since, trying to understand what we were facing. And you never told the Council? Asked Captain Davis. We tried, Carter said bitterly. 3 times we brought evidence to Council sessions. 3 times they dismissed it as human paranoia. They said we were inventing threats to justify our military buildup. Blake leaned forward in his chair. So we've been preparing for this fight alone. Not just preparing, Morrison said. We've been building. Every atmospheric processor we created had dual-use capability. Every precision tool we manufactured could be converted to weapons production. Every computer system we installed had hidden subroutines designed for warfare. Dr. Wells looked shocked. You turned our civilian infrastructure into weapons? We turned our civilian infrastructure into survival tools, Morrison corrected. The Devourers consume everything they encounter. Planets, stars, entire solar systems. They convert matter into more ships, growing stronger with each conquest. The only way to stop them is to be prepared for total war. Carter activated another display showing the approach of the alien fleet. Based on their current trajectory and speed, they will reach the outer edge of Council space in 18 months. The first systems they encounter will be completely unprepared. What? About the galaxy's defenses? Asked Davis. Hughes laughed grimly. What defenses? We built the frontier defense grid. We maintained the early warning systems. We trained the response forces. Without us, they're blind and helpless. The irony is perfect, Blake added. They banished us to remove a threat to galactic peace. In doing so, they eliminated their only defense against a real threat. Morrison walked to the window overlooking the construction yards where humanity's new fleet was taking shape. These ships bore no resemblance to the vessels they had left behind. They were built for war, incorporating technologies that had been hidden for decades. Show them the weapons, Morrison ordered. Carter brought up technical specifications that made several council members gasp. Plasma cannons that could crack planets, stealth systems that made ships invisible to any known sensor, armor that could withstand the heat of a star's core, engines that could fold space itself. My God, whispered Wells. How long have we been hiding this capability? Since the first Devourer probe was detected, Morrison replied. We knew that someday we would face an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be negotiated with, couldn't be deterred. We prepared for the day when the only choice would be to fight or die. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Rogers, head of military, intelligence presented the most disturbing information of all. We've been conducting deep space reconnaissance for 5 years, he said. The Devourers have already consumed 3 galaxies in this local cluster. Each victory makes them stronger, more adaptable. What do they want? Asked Wells. Everything, Rogers replied simply. They don't negotiate, they don't communicate, they don't show mercy. They encounter a civilization and they consume it. Every living being, every planet, every resource. Nothing is left behind. Carter displayed images, captured by long-range probes. Dead solar systems where planets had been dismantled down to their cores. Space where entire star clusters had vanished, leaving only empty void. The Devourers were efficient and thorough. But they have weaknesses, Morrison said. Our analysis suggests they're vulnerable to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Their coordination systems can be disrupted. And most importantly, they've never faced an enemy that understood them in advance. Blake pulled up manufacturing reports. We've been building weapons designed specifically to exploit these weaknesses. EMP generators that can shut down their coordination networks. Quantum resonators that can tear apart their hulls. Virus programs that can turn their own systems against them. You're talking about going to war with beings that have destroyed galaxies, Wells said. We're talking about survival, Morrison corrected. The Devourers won't stop at the Council species. Once they consume the galaxy, they'll come after us. This is our fight whether we choose it or not. Davis presented intelligence on the current state of Council space. The breakdown of human-maintained systems is accelerating. Their defensive capabilities are dropping every day. When the Devourers arrive, they'll face scattered, weakened civilizations that can't coordinate a response. So what do you propose? Asked Hughes. Morrison returned to the display showing the approaching threat. We have 18 months to prepare. We use that time to build the largest fleet in human history. We develop weapons the Devourers have never encountered. And when they reach Council space, we hit them with everything we have. The Council banished us, Wells pointed out. Why should we risk our lives to save them? Because if we don't, everyone dies, Carter said quietly. The Devourers don't care about political boundaries or species differences. They'll consume the Council species and then come for us. Our only chance is to stop them before they get established in the galaxy. Rogers pulled up tactical projections. The optimal strategy is to let them engage Council forces first. The initial contact will teach us about their current capabilities. Then we strike at their command structures while they're focused on easy targets. That means letting billions die, Wells protested. That means ensuring trillions survive, Morrison replied. We can't save everyone, but we can save our species and maybe preserve some remnant of galactic civilization. Blake presented construction timelines. We can have 200 ships ready in 18 months, each one more powerful than anything in the current galactic fleet, if we start immediately. And if we're wrong about their capabilities? Asked Hughes. Then we die fighting, instead of waiting to be consumed, Morrison said. But I don't think we're wrong. We've studied them longer than anyone. We understand their patterns, their weaknesses, their limitations. The meeting continued for hours as humanity's leaders debated the greatest decision in their species' history. Outside the conference room, construction continued on the ships and weapons that would determine whether intelligent life survived in the galaxy. When the vote was finally taken, it was unanimous. Humanity would prepare for war against an enemy that had never known defeat. They would become what the Council had accused them of being, the galaxy's greatest threat. But this time, they would be a threat to the right enemy. As the leadership dispersed to begin their preparations, Morrison remained at the window watching the shipyards. In 18 months, those yards would launch a fleet capable of fighting gods. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. Admiral, Carter said, joining him at the window, do you really think we can win? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I think we're about to find out what humans are really capable of when everything depends on it. In the darkness between stars, the Devourers continued their inexorable approach, unaware that their next target had prepared a surprise that would reshape the galaxy. 3 months after the last human ship had vanished beyond the outer rim, the galaxy began to understand what silence meant. It started small, with minor inconveniences that seemed unimportant at first. A shipping delay here, a technical malfunction there, communication breakdowns that frustrated but did not alarm. On the Vorthak homeworld, High Regent Zethkara stood in her crystal palace watching the great processing plants that had operated for 1,000 years suddenly grind to a halt. The Vorthak were beings of living crystal, and their entire civilization depended on the precise shaping and refinement of crystalline structures. For generations, they had used human-made precision tools to cut and polish crystals to tolerances measured in single atoms. What is the status of Production Complex 7? Zethkara asked her chief engineer, a younger Vorthak named Kethvoril. The cutting tools have failed, High Regent, Kethvoril replied, his crystal body flickering with embarrassment patterns. The calibration systems require adjustments that we do not understand. The humans always maintained them for us. Then, learn, Zethkara commanded. How difficult can it be? Kethvorl's light patterns shifted to deep uncertainty. We have tried, High Regent. The human manuals are incomplete. Critical information is missing. Without the proper calibration, the tools produce flawed crystals that shatter during processing. Across the galaxy, the ethereal collective faced a different but equally serious crisis. Dr. Velnash, a being of pure energy who served as their chief researcher, discovered that their most advanced laboratories were becoming unstable. The exotic matter research facilities that had unlocked the secrets of dimensional physics required constant monitoring and adjustment using algorithms that only human scientists had mastered. The containment field in Research Station Omega is fluctuating, reported his assistant Lumara. The exotic matter is becoming unstable. Velnash extended his energy form to examine the control systems. The mathematics were beyond anything his species could comprehend. Humans had developed these equations through decades of trial and error, recording each success and failure until they understood how to control forces that could tear holes in space itself. Evacuate the station, Velnash ordered. We cannot risk a containment breach. It was the third facility they had lost in as many weeks. Each evacuation set back their research by years, destroying experiments that had taken decades to set up. The ethereal collective, who prided themselves on being the galaxy's greatest scientists, found themselves unable to operate their own laboratories. In the outer territories, Governor Clay Phillips of the abandoned Centauri station maintained a skeleton crew to monitor what remained of human installations. Through long-range sensors, he watched alien colonies struggle with problems that humans had solved generations ago. Sir, said his communications officer, Lieutenant Paul Carter, we're receiving distress calls from the Proxima colonies. Their water purification systems are failing. Phillips studied the sensor readings. The Proxima system housed 3 billion Zephyrians on worlds that had been terraformed by human engineers. The atmospheric processors and water treatment facilities were marvels of engineering that had turned barren rocks into garden worlds. Now those same systems were breaking down without human maintenance. What's the nature of the failure? Phillips asked. Looks like a cascade breakdown in the filtration matrices, Carter replied. The backup systems are triggering, but they don't know how to reset the primary filters. The Zephyrians are looking at water shortages within days. And there's nothing we can do to help, Phillips said quietly. We're officially not here. The most tragic situation was developing among the Koreth, the former slave species that humanity had liberated against the Council's wishes. Without human protection, they found themselves defenseless against their former masters who were already moving to reclaim their property. Captain Lisa Barnes commanded a cloaked observation ship hiding in the asteroid field near the Koreth, homeworld. Her orders were strict. Watch, but do not interfere. Humanity was officially gone from this galaxy, and any action would violate their agreement with the Council. Captain, said her tactical officer, the Trilix fleet has entered the system. 12 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. The Koreth Defense Force doesn't stand a chance. Barnes watched the tactical display as the tree-like Trilix beings moved to reclaim the world they had once used as a slave farm. The Koreth had built a small but proud civilization in the 5 years since their liberation. They had schools for their children, hospitals for their sick, and factories that produced goods they could call their own. All of it was about to be destroyed. The Koreth are transmitting surrender terms, reported her communications officer. They're asking for mercy. And the Trilix response? There is no mercy for runaway property. Prepare for planetary occupation. Barnes gripped her command chair until her knuckles went white. Every instinct told her to intervene, to protect the innocent people below. But her orders were clear, and humanity could not risk exposure. Meanwhile, the most ominous developments were occurring at the edges of known space. The deep space monitoring network that humans had maintained for generations was going dark, one station at a time. Without human technicians to maintain the sensors and analyze the data, the galaxy was becoming blind to threats from beyond its borders. Commander Andy Martinez, formerly stationed at Outpost Theta 7, now monitored the situation from a hidden base in the dark sector. His job was to track what remained of the early warning system and report any significant developments to human leadership. The outer rim sensor grid is down to 30% capacity, he reported to Admiral Hughes. During their weekly briefing, most of the automated systems are failing without maintenance. The aliens are trying to repair them, but they don't understand the technology. What about the deep space scans? Hughes asked. Are they picking up anything unusual? Martinez's expression darkened. That's the problem, sir. The few stations still operating are detecting anomalous energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim. The automated analysis systems are classifying them as unknown threats, but without human oversight, the aliens don't understand the warnings. How serious are these threats? Hard to say without access to the full sensor network, but based on what we can detect from here, something big is moving in the void between galaxies, something that wasn't there 6 months ago. Back in Council space, emergency sessions were being called as reports of system failures poured in from across the galaxy. Ambassador Luxor Prime of the Ethereal Collective found himself trying to coordinate responses to crises that were beyond his understanding. The trade disruptions are becoming severe, reported the Vorthak delegate. Our crystal exports have dropped by 60%. We cannot maintain production without human precision tools. Our research capabilities are severely compromised, added Velnash. We have lost 3 major facilities and cannot risk operating the others without human expertise. The outer colonies are experiencing widespread infrastructure failures, said the Trilex representative. Water treatment, atmospheric processing, power generation. All systems designed by humans, all failing simultaneously. Luxor Prime struggled to process the scope of the crisis. Surely these are temporary setbacks. We can learn to operate these systems ourselves. With respect, said the Hegemony ambassador, human engineering is beyond our current understanding. They built systems using principles we have not mastered. It would take us decades to redevelop their knowledge. Then we contact them, Luxor Prime decided. We request technical assistance. They are banished, the Vorthak delegate reminded him. Contact with humans is forbidden under the exile decree. The exile decree did not account for these circumstances, Luxor Prime replied. Perhaps we can negotiate a limited technical exchange. But when they tried to send messages beyond the outer rim, there was no response. Humanity had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. The silence from the dark sector was absolute. Dr. Eleanor Woods, chief scientist on one of the hidden human bases, monitored the alien communications with professional interest. Her team was tracking the cascade failures across galactic civilization, documenting the breakdown of systems that humanity had built and maintained for generations. It's fascinating from a sociological perspective, she told her assistant, Dr. Brian Kelly. They assumed our technology was simple because we made it look easy. They never realized the complexity behind the simplicity. How long before complete systemic failure? Kelly asked. At current rates, 6 months for critical infrastructure, maybe a year for complete civilizational breakdown. Unless they figure out how to reverse engineer our technology, can they? Woods shook her head. Not likely. We had 3 centuries to develop these techniques. They're starting from scratch with incomplete information. It would be like trying to build a starship after only seeing pictures of one. On the bridge of the UES Liberty, Admiral Hughes reviewed the daily intelligence reports with growing concern. The galaxy was falling apart faster than anyone had predicted, but more troubling were the sensor readings from deep space. Admiral, said Lieutenant Parker. Long-range reconnaissance confirms Commander Martinez's reports. 6 months had passed since the Council spoke their judgment, and the galaxy watched the largest movement of people in its history. Every human world, every station, every tiny outpost among the stars began to empty as millions of people gathered their lives and prepared to leave everything they had built. Admiral Ben Hughes stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, humanity's greatest warship. Through the massive windows, he could see hundreds of ships lifting off from New Terra, the jewel of human space. The planet had taken 200 years to terraform, turning a dead rock into a world of green forests and blue oceans. Now they were abandoning it in a matter of weeks. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Amy Parker from her communication station, "the last civilian transports are requesting clearance to depart. Colony 7 reports complete evacuation. The terraforming stations are ready for shutdown." Hughes nodded. "Give them clearance. And Amy? Make sure every ship knows the route to the rendezvous point. No one gets left behind." Parker was young, barely 25, but she had steady hands and a calm voice that never wavered even when giving bad news. She had volunteered to stay until the very end, making sure every human got safely off-world. "Yes, sir. All ships are accounted for. On the planet below, the great cities were going dark. New Geneva, where the first human colonists had landed. Port Liberty, where the shipyards had built vessels that explored half the galaxy. Garden Valley, where they had learned to grow earth crops under an alien sun. All empty now, their people gone, their lights fading one by one." "It breaks my heart to see it," said Captain Susan Wells, who had joined Hughes on the bridge. Her medical ship was one of the last to leave, after making sure no one was left behind in hospitals or emergency shelters. 2 centuries of work, and we're throwing it all away. "We're not throwing it away," Hughes replied. "We're taking it with us. Every lesson we learned building New Terra, every technique we developed, every problem we solved, that knowledge travels with us." On the industrial world of Forge Prime, Engineer Tony Blake was overseeing the most critical part of the evacuation. Forge Prime made 70% of the galaxy's advanced computer systems. The massive factories that covered 3 continents were being systematically dismantled, their secrets packed into cargo ships. "Careful with that fabrication unit," Blake called to his crew as they loaded another piece of equipment. "That machine can build processor cores down to the atomic level. The aliens have nothing like it." Blake was a big man with strong hands, and a mind that understood machines better than most people understood themselves. He had spent 15 years designing the production lines on Forge Prime, and he knew exactly how much the galaxy would miss them when they were gone. "Boss," said one of his workers, "what about the technical manuals? The aliens will still have those." Blake smiled grimly. "Check Section 7 of the manuals. All the critical specifications are missing. We never shared the real secret of our manufacturing. They've got the blueprints, but they don't have the knowledge to make them work." As the factories came apart, their most advanced equipment vanished into the holds of waiting ships. Precision, tools that could measure distances smaller than atoms, computers that could think faster than any organic brain, manufacturing systems that could build anything if you knew how to program them, all of it leaving with the humans, leaving behind empty buildings and obsolete machines. The evacuation of Kepler Station was perhaps the most tragic. Dr. Carter stood in the main laboratory, watching her team destroy 15 years of medical research. The station had been on the verge of breakthrough treatments for diseases that killed millions across the galaxy every year. "Are you sure about this?" asked Dr. Kevin Ross, her assistant. "This research could save lives." "Whose lives?" Carter asked quietly. "They banished us. They called us dangerous. Now they can solve their own medical problems." She activated the destruction sequence, and years of work vanished in controlled explosions. Genetic therapies that could have extended lifespans, neural treatments that could have repaired damaged brains, antiviral compounds that could have stopped plagues. All of it gone, because the Council had decided humanity was too dangerous to trust. The most dramatic evacuation happened at the Frontier Defense Grid. Commander Rick Davis coordinated the withdrawal of 60,000 military personnel from the network of stations that protected the galaxy's outer edge. These stations watched for threats from deep space, maintained early warning systems, and provided the first line of defense against anything that might come from beyond the stars. "Sir," said Sergeant Mike Rogers, "Command wants to know if we should leave the sensor arrays active." Davis looked at the tactical display showing the vast network of sensors and weapons platforms that stretched across the galactic rim. Humanity had built this system over 3 generations, using their own ships and their own lives to protect worlds that belong to other species. Shut them down, Davis ordered. All of them. If the Council wants to defend their own borders, let them figure out how. One by one, the lights went out on the display. Sensor stations that had watched the void for 50 years went silent. Warning beacons that had guided ships safely through dangerous space stopped broadcasting. Weapons, platforms that had destroyed countless threats powered down and went dark. What about the automated systems? Asked Rogers. Some of these stations can run themselves for years. Wipe the computers, Davis said. Every database, every program, every piece of code. I want nothing left that could help them understand how we did this. As the military transports lifted, off from the frontier stations, they left behind empty shells. The aliens would find buildings and equipment, but they would not find the knowledge to use them. The humans had built the galaxy's defenses, and now they were taking that knowledge with them. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Martinez oversaw the evacuation of the research base on Titan VII, where humanity had been studying exotic matter and experimental physics. The base had been working on technologies that could revolutionize space travel, but like everything else, it was being abandoned. Pack everything, Martinez told his team. Every computer, every sample, every piece of equipment. If we can't, take it. Destroy it. The research had been years ahead of anything other species could achieve. Experiments with artificial gravity, studies of dimensional folding, prototype engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. All of it was loaded onto specially designed ships or reduced to atoms by matter disintegrators. Captain Danny Wilson commanded one of the cargo fleets carrying civilians from the mining worlds of the asteroid belt. These massive ships held entire communities that had lived their whole lives in space, mining rare elements and building the infrastructure that kept the galaxy running. Captain, said his navigator, we're getting transmissions from alien ships. They're offering to buy our mining equipment. Wilson laughed bitterly. Tell them the equipment isn't for sale. Tell them nothing is for sale. They wanted us gone, and gone is what they're getting. The mining platforms that had extracted rare minerals from dead asteroids were being dismantled and packed away. Refineries that had processed exotic materials were stripped down to their basic components. The knowledge of where to find the richest deposits, accumulated over generations of exploration, was encrypted and taken with the evacuation fleets. The weeks passed. The magnitude of the evacuation became clear. Humanity wasn't just leaving their colonies. They were taking their civilization with them. Every piece of advanced technology, every scientific discovery, every technique and method they had developed over centuries of space exploration, all of it was disappearing beyond the outer rim. The alien species that had cheered humanity's banishment began to notice problems. Trade routes that had operated for decades suddenly had no ships to maintain them. Space stations that had provided fuel and repairs were abandoned. The vast network of communication relays that connected distant worlds started showing gaps. But the humans continued their exodus with quiet efficiency. Ship after ship crossed the boundary into the unknown regions. Beyond the galactic rim, they carried not just people and equipment, but something more valuable than either: the accumulated knowledge and experience of a species that had spent centuries solving problems no one else could solve. Admiral Hughes watched the last transport disappear into hyperspace from his position on the Liberty. Around him, his bridge crew worked with calm professionalism, just as they had for months of careful planning and execution. "Admiral," said Parker, "all ships are accounted for. The evacuation is complete." Hughes nodded and turned to look one last time at the space where human civilization had flourished. Soon, alien ships would arrive to claim what was left. They would find empty buildings and obsolete equipment. They would not find the knowledge that had made it all possible. "Set course for the dark sector," Hughes ordered. "It's time to find our new home." As the Liberty jumped to hyperspace, humanity left the galaxy they had helped build. Behind them, 47 alien species celebrated their victory, not yet understanding what they had lost.